couple weeks ago, on a crisp fall afternoon here in Hyde Park, I went over to CVS to pick up some staples for the house. You know, the supplies you just can't get at the produce market. And as I was weaving through each aisle, or just relishing the opportunity to be shopping in a real store with real people, I paused in the small grocery section. There, amidst the very limited supply of canned fruits and vegetables, was a single can of cranberry sauce. And I chuckled to myself and thought how, even in a pandemic, when many of us are staying home this year, cranberry sauce is a must have for this time of year. Doesn't it seem strange that a random berry which grows in a bog is a staple for so many and a tradition for the Thanksgiving holiday? Like, how did this come to be? This food even was nostalgic for Mark Twain, who put it on his list of favorite foods that would make up the, quote, perfect American feast while he was homesick abroad. This prompted research by Andrew Beers, author of Twain's Feast, to look further into the origin of these berries and their place on the Thanksgiving table. What came from his research was a lesson on traditions, where they come from and how they adapt. Using his findings, today we will look at our Thanksgiving traditions and where they come from through the perspective of an unexpected guide, the cranberry. Cranberry's connection to Thanksgiving is in reality one of commercial timing rather than historical fact. While many think that cranberries were present at the first Thanksgiving, that is in fact false. That first meal together was in reality a grim affair, not the nice and happy myth taught in many American schools. It was most likely an uncomfortable meal. Neither of the groups could communicate, most of the pilgrims had died by this point, and the only food confirmed to have probably been at the feast between the English and the Wampanoag are venison and wild birds. Neither group was really sure they could trust the other one, so they ate together more to keep close eyes on one another, and after the food was eaten, the pilgrims took this as an opportunity to display their weapons and military formations to the Wampanoag as a show of force. Now, I'm relatively certain that even the most awkward family holiday we could call to mind would pale in comparison to the type of dinner guests the English were that day. The use of cranberries in Thanksgiving feasts today is actually because of its growing popularity around the time that Abraham Lincoln made Thanksgiving a national holiday in 1863. When it was first a national holiday, it was celebrating the union of the United States post-Civil War and had no specific menu or story attributed to it. People recommended many foods to be part of the Thanksgiving meal, and cranberries were in style and not currently associated with any holiday. So over time, food like turkey and cranberries became established traditions, and the story of the first Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims was attached. The creation of this holiday shows how traditions can change and adapt and morph over time. However, sometimes they don't always change for the better. This Thanksgiving myth of peace and unity between the English and the Wampanoag is harmful, as it focuses on an untrue narrative and celebrates the beginning of a story which for our indigenous cousins resulted in destruction. When I learned that this holiday had a past filled with colonialism and genocide, I was devastated, because throughout my life I was taught this was a holiday of peace. I have many fond memories of dressing up as a pilgrim, making art projects of the Mayflower, and reading books about the story of the first Thanksgiving. I even am a direct descendant of John Howland, a man who came over on the Mayflower itself. With this information, I had to recognize that this story of the real Thanksgiving, in many ways, is my story. And that has been difficult and important work. Part of what that looks like for me is to tell the true story of the English Pilgrims and their impact on the indigenous people, and to not participate in traditions that perpetuate the untrue myth. Instead, I work towards a Thanksgiving which isn't focused on a warped version of our past, but embraces our dynamic and diverse culture of the present and future. One way to do this is to uplift and honor the stories of the indigenous people themselves. Thus far, we've focused a lot on the perspective of the Pilgrims in the Thanksgiving traditions. So now the Cranberry has somewhere else to take us. That is the Wampanoag tribe. Today, the Wampanoag tribe of Aquinnah on Martha's Vineyard celebrates different holidays other than Thanksgiving in the fall. One holiday is the National Day of Mourning that takes place on Thanksgiving Day itself. The other, a more joyful day, is Cranberry Day, which happens in the third week of October. According to Jeanette Vanderhoop of the tribe in Aquinnah, the Wampanoag people 10,000 years ago would store the cranberries in earthen pits to have vitamin supplements in the winter to prevent scurvy. In the 1980s, Cranberry Day was started by two women in the tribe to reconnect with this practice and appreciation of cranberries in their own way. This has been a holiday ever since. On Cranberry Day, children are excused from school, businesses are closed, and everyone in the Wampanoag community gather together to harvest and eat cranberries. Jeanette Vanderhoop herself said the best way to enjoy them is with a sharp cheddar. When reflecting on the holiday, she said, "Traditions change and cultures are adaptable. Things are forgotten and things come back. And there is a reason we do what we do." Cranberry Day is a way for the Wampanoag people to embrace their own history and traditions in a new way. This day celebrates the community, the families, and the heritage in a way that is empowering and makes sense for their group. Sadly, because of colonialization, there was a disconnect between the people of today and the traditions of their ancestors. However, the founders of Cranberry Day made a new tradition which connected them with their past. It shows how cultures change and adapt, and with that change can come joy and celebration. Traditions can be really important, whether it is to feel connected to the generations before us or to make our own traditions for the family we choose. This year, because of the pandemic, the traditions that we may hold are just simply not possible. In order to keep each other safe, many of us will need to stay home and love one another from a distance. Thanksgiving is a complicated holiday in the best of times, a day of holding many truths and emotions. We hold the truth of the real Thanksgiving story alongside the love of our family traditions. We grapple with the reality of what it means to be a part of this country and its history, while lifting up prayers of gratitude for what we have currently in our lives. For some of us, Thanksgiving will always be a difficult holiday for whatever reason it is. And on top of that, we hold all that this particular year brings with it. We are experiencing varying amounts of grief over all we have lost, a desire to celebrate together, and the disorienting feeling of our traditions just going out the window. There's a specific feeling of loss that some of us may be experiencing this year about our traditions. This year will be different for this holiday, and while we can't make it feel the same as it always has in the past, it is an opportunity for us to make new traditions. No matter what Thanksgiving Day means to each of us, we can examine where our traditions stem from around this day and why they are important to us. We may unknowingly be attached to traditions which are harmful to others, like the inaccuracy of the first Thanksgiving story. Something we wouldn't have realized until we had this year, when everything about this holiday has made us take pause. As we make new traditions for ourselves this year, we can strive to dismantle the tangled Thanksgiving myth and the harm it has caused. Let us ask ourselves, what does a Thanksgiving look like that celebrates all of us in America and not just some of us? How do we remember the truth of the past while also holding Vanderhoop's message that cultures can change and adapt? Whatever we do this year, be it on Zoom or at home, will be very different. And we can make sure that these new takes on tradition embody the complexity of this holiday's history and our present time. We can share our gratitude for one another while also acknowledging the truth about the first Thanksgiving. We can have our cranberry sauce and take the opportunity to teach others about the Wampanoag tribe and their celebration of Cranberry Day. I hope that as you enter this Thanksgiving, that you are as creative as you desire with this holiday, that you embrace the emotions that you are experiencing as you create a new way of celebrating. May we all honor both the truth of the past and the truth of our present this year. And while we are all starting new traditions, may I suggest this year we can all try something new together. Fresh cranberries with sharp cheddar.